Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a podcast of Profiles in Excellence, where we visit with highly skilled individuals who have made an impact, a unique impact on their job or industry. We really focus around chatting around applying technology and solutions to business problems. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dan Counts. I'm the founder of FairwindslogiX. We are a talent acquisition firm and career coaching firm based out of the San Francisco Bay Area. Today, we have my friend Gunjan Goel, who is the Senior Vice President of IT and CIO at Cobham. Cobham is a company that you may not have heard of before, but once Gunjan explains what they do, it's something that we've all heard of before, so it's quite interesting. He recently published an article entitled Missed Opportunities with IT, and it was published over at CIO Magazine. We'll put a link to that in the description. Got a lot of interest out there, and we have him here to talk about that amongst other topics. So with that, I'll welcome Gunjan. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thank you, Dan. It's an honor. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. Been wanting to have you on for a while now, so this is terrific. So first off, tell us a little bit about who Cobham is and what they do in your role.
It's a great question. I still remember 5 years ago when I started to look out for roles. I had somebody like you call me from UK at 5 a.m. my time, and the gentleman said, that there's a role at Cobham, and I said, Cobham who? And I've been in aerospace for many years with Allied Signal and Honeywell and other companies, and so I should have known, but I didn't. So I said, what does the company do? And he only had to tell me about one product, and then I felt like I knew everything about Cobham. And so one of the main products, that's how the company started, is the flight refueling system. That's how all aircrafts get fueled in midair, the ones that are capable of. And Sir Alan Cobham, the founder of the company, was an aviation pioneer in the early 1900s. He was the one who mapped out many of the airports we see today, many of the flight paths we see today. And one of the other things he did was he invented the flight refueling system. And in fact, on YouTube, there are some really old videos of him demonstrating refueling in glider planes and some really, really old planes. So yes, that's what Cobham does. And we are.
Tell us a little bit about, the big topic today is, COVID-19 and how workforces are changing and adapting. And I'm sure with your company and the global environment that you're in, it must be a lot of challenges. So what modifications have you made? What's working? What's not working? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. We are seeing this in our age, in our times, something like this, something at such a global scale. Previously when things like this have happened, they've been localized or at least limited to a certain continent. And so this is the first time me, or even, I was talking to my parents, that they ever remember something of this magnitude and how the world is responding. Cobham, like any other company, obviously is impacted by it, especially being a high-tech manufacturing and engineering company where a lot of effort, a lot of work actually happens on site amongst teams, which sit next to each other in cubicle setups or open space setups. So it's been particularly hard. We are no different than really many other companies like us out there. From a work culture perspective, we are adapting like everybody else. Some of our functions, especially IT, was used to quite a bit of remote culture and quite a bit of travel amongst really all functions in Cobham. We are really spread out between US, Denmark, France, UK, and Australia. And especially between UK and North America, there's a fair bit of travel, people going back and forth, and even using video conferencing, something we implemented a few years ago on a very large scale. We use Cisco telepresence. And so a lot of that technology has really helped us. All our sites are connected. I have a Cisco telepresence system at home that I use very, very frequently, almost on a daily basis, even before COVID. So a lot of that stuff has helped. A lot of the infrastructure modifications, a lot of the security modifications we had implemented over the last 5 years are now finally, also showing value in this kind of environment. It's particularly hard for people on the manufacturing floor and operations that really have to be done on sites. And so, we are dealing with it like everybody else. But IT is standing up to really providing remote capability to as many users as possible.
How many folks on your team are you managing across the globe and the impact of that?
So across IT, we have roughly 200 plus people.
Okay.
And many of them are in locations either working from home, or they are in locations where we don't have a facility per se. Because a lot of our facilities are in smaller areas. And so as we've acquired companies, it has not been possible to hire talent necessarily directly in those areas. So we have provided that flexibility to our employees.
That's awesome. So let's get to the article that you wrote. As I mentioned, it was published by Insider magazine. The title was "Missed Opportunities with IT," and I had gone through the article. You mentioned a couple examples in there of areas that have not been, well managed, if you will. You picked up the list and wrote them down in here. There's order management, procurement, operations, and logistics. And I think it's an interesting combination because, we hear a lot of technologies associated with those subjects. So what were your thoughts around why those ones particularly stood out to you?
Yeah, I've been kind of thinking, I like to write, I like to speak often, I like to share experiences because that's how we all learn. There's always opportunity for that. So I'm a fair bit active outside of work and at work. So this article just came about. The magazine approached me and looked for some ideas and topics, and this is something I've observed over the years. Just like really every function, I think it could apply to every function, but particularly in IT, we have seen tremendous amount of transformation outside of workplace for sure for the last 10-15 years. My kids are more computer savvy for their age than I ever was when I was their age, right?
Yeah.
And learning is happening in a very different manner today than it used to happen before. It's not about right or wrong, but just different. And so we try to leverage, what's changed and try to leverage so we can make the best use of it. And so when I look in the workplace, think of a four-wall building that does everything from concept of a product all the way to manufacturing it, delivering it, order taking, all of those functions, right? It's sort of an organized chaos in a way. And all these functions have to come together and work like a dance movement so that people can plan, people can predict what's going to happen, and then product moves from one point to the next and out the door. And some of the functions I mentioned in my article, order management and procurement and some of these functions are quite important because they are the ones setting the pace. They are front in the line in the value chain. They set the pace. So if we are changing too many things there, obviously the downstream processes like production planning and manufacturing and shipping, receiving, they can't respond. They're always changing. Things are always changing on them. And especially on a manufacturing floor, every change comes at a cost. And so I think from a technology perspective, we have again seen tremendous transformation in those functions, Salesforce for CRM and many tools now for procurement and streamlining of it. So I think we need to continue to get better in those functions so we can provide a somewhat of a predictable path for the operations downstream in a business. And that's how businesses that succeed are the ones that are executing that value chain very well. And the businesses that struggle are the ones that are probably not managing those functions very well. So that was sort of the gist of what I was trying to say in that article.
Interesting. I thought it was really interesting in your article. You talk a little bit about kind of a stigma that I think we all kind of run into, being a former IT guy, software developer myself. You said many still view IT as a cost function, right? They manage laptops and desktops and infrastructure, those kinds of things in the day-to-day service. What do you think has really caused that vision to persist? And what are your thoughts about how it can change?
Again, I'm generalizing to make a point. That's not the case with every company out there. But the opportunity, and I really think about things as opportunities. Things that are working well, let them work well. But try and observe what's not working well, because that's when we as leaders and professionals can go make a difference, right? And so from an opportunity perspective, when I think of IT as a function, I think there is still tremendous untapped potential left. The examples I gave, we're seeing really a lot of technology boom outside the workplace, capabilities we're able to use that we never thought were possible, and I mentioned some of them in the article, like Uber and Airbnb and Ola Rooms, company that just came out of nowhere, and now they are the second largest hotel chain in the world.
Yeah.
So just amazing stuff is happening. You can see planets through an app, and it's just mind-boggling stuff that is happening. So at workplace, we should be able to do something similar. Things should not be that difficult, where we should be able to forecast things better, plan things better, and so on. So, from an IT perspective, I think part of it is the education of the executive board, the executive ranks, where, how do they really see IT? Is it really about providing infrastructure support, security of the environment and laptops and desktops? Is that it? Important stuff, but is that where the boundary is? Or should we be challenging IT to also help with the organic growth of the businesses, acquisitions, mergers, joint ventures, and growth of the top line and improvement of the bottom line? And I feel there is no reason why we shouldn't ask IT to step up their game and help in those areas. We say those things, but I think generally IT is still viewed as a cost center. You do those things well, give us my laptop, desktop, and if they work well, I'm pretty happy. But we are I think letting go of a whole business transformation, digital transformation space that could really come to rescue of especially businesses that are not doing well. And especially in the post-COVID era, it's going to become much more important that we are much more efficient in how we execute our businesses. And technology should and can come to help there in a big way.
So it's interesting because you talk about that in the article, about IT is the one function that can see the complete story of the entire enterprise, right? Because they touch everything, right? Yet from a functional standpoint, the various functions, they're very, very detailed in the areas that they work in, but they may not see from a siloed perspective outside, of that.
Absolutely.
What has your experience been at your current role? And if you were to walk into another role, how would you maybe view that and change that and make it more productive for IT as more of a business partner and changing that perspective?
Yeah, it's interesting. This is something I've observed globally. I've been very lucky with companies like Honeywell and with Cobham and even with CSE, where I've traveled a fair bit. I've lived in places in the Far East like China and Singapore and Philippines and others. And I still remember 15 years ago when I started some of that work, leading digital transformation for some really large global programs. I landed in China and I went to our first facility there, and I had to sort of, my first day trying to meet people, learn about what they do, also tell them, what we are going to do in terms of business transformation, digital transformation there. And I talked to every function. And I was fairly new in that space. And I learned some bits. And I learned sort of about their function and maybe their adjacent function, what they do, how do they pass on things to the next person in line. When I got to the IT person, it's funny, got an overview of the whole site, all the functional areas. And especially in some of the meetings where we are trying to determine full scope and stuff, I just found out just by observing that IT person was the one who was kind of the common thread across all these people. Because IT, we hear about, especially when we are doing application support, and deploying of new applications, we get very involved in understanding business requirements. But we also know the legacy systems very well. We know the data very well. And so we are able to partner with each of the function owners in a very intimate way. And we are able to then put a whole story together. Now, it may not be very deep, just like, comparing with the knowledge of an individual functional owner, but we get a very good, somewhat of a deep level of an understanding of how the business is operating. And I've seen that site after site after site, that IT does have a very good understanding of business applications. Now, not in every case.
IT is the common thread. And now with data analytics at a level, or I should say data science, right? All that data mining we're doing now should be just a ripe opportunity for IT to really come into the picture of being a central partner to the enterprise versus the ones, as you said, that perception. And again, it's not in all companies who think that way, but it does seem to be a repeating pattern.
And what we are able to do as an IT function is I'd call it as a global balance between a global optimum and a local optimum. Local optimum being what does a business need? A business with many businesses, what does a business need? And then what do we need as a company? And what are the common needs across businesses? And so being in IT, similar to being in HR and finance, I guess some of those functions are also horizontal global functions. We are able to balance between these different optimums. But when somebody is really working at a site level, they are not necessarily thinking about a global optimum or even attempt to move towards that. That's not their charter. Their charter is to run their business very, very well. And that's where some of the challenge comes, honestly, between IT and the individual businesses. And that's up to us as leaders to really make sure we balance that. It can't be all about global. It can't be all about local, and that's something I really enjoy doing with many of the companies I've worked for, is try to find that balance. And that's what people really like, because once they see these capabilities, they kind of fall in love with them and say, wow, if we can we get more of this? Can we get new capabilities? We did that very well. I think we need more of those things.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. And it kind of takes us to another point too that I want to ask you about, because when we spoke the other day about doing our podcast together, you had mentioned that many times IT is not even at the same table in some cases as the rest of the executive team making decisions about the enterprise. How would you characterize that, and what are some examples of where you could turn that into a profit center?
Yeah. Part of, I think, is just general education of, like I said, the executive board. I think they just need to make sure they are challenging every function. IT should not be any different. And we all, as executives, have experience outside where we are seeing the value technology is bringing. Why not at the workplace? Challenge them. Yeah. But part of also is, as an IT function, we got to start talking the business language. And we tend to focus sometimes too much on maybe infrastructure programs or foundational activities. And the business, while we have kind of fixed some of those foundations and they are really needed, the business doesn't necessarily see the step change in what just happened. And they say, you spent all my budget, but what did I really get? I'm still sitting with a laptop, which is the same model I had last year, right? So I think, again, we got to find that balance. And yes, we need to do those foundational things, but we also need to do some show and tell, deliver some capabilities on which the business can then build themselves on, improve themselves on, and get better at it, whether it's by reducing costs, reducing rework, reducing waste in the processes, or it's by giving them tools that will help them understand their customers better. What are we selling to the customers? Who is a profitable customer? So when the time comes to discounts and promotions, we are not giving the same thing to everybody. IT leaders, IT functions struggle with business transformation and digital transformation. Stuff is still failing all the time, and it really shouldn't be. My experience, I've been in this industry for 25 years. We've failed a lot of times, but we have learned from that. And now, fortunately, we have gotten so good at it that we can really predict an outcome. And we know when things are not going well, and then react to it and recover from it. And it's all about going all the way to the 100%, but most programs, many programs, they struggle to get to the 95%, and they're just not able to see that last mile, which
Right.
obviously never really, helps you deliver the full benefits of anything you're trying to do. So.
Great discussion, and I know we could talk about this for hours. I wanted to ask you a little bit about what do you want to do as a next step in your career? Like what would be the next ideal opportunity for you? Next change, if you will.
Yeah, Cobham has been a tremendous experience, and I've enjoyed every bit of it. I've been with them now for 5 years, and I started Cobham, and this is similar to what I'd like to do going forward. I was asked to join Cobham at a time when they were really going through some really, really tough times. They had an ERP program, which was in red. They had a cybersecurity incident, big time, and all of it. It really took the first couple of years to really get an understanding of what's really happening and why, and getting people on board. It is those small successes up front that you also needed to demonstrate to gain trust, and then really have strategy that we can then execute little by little, slowly and gradually to make a difference. And over the next couple of years after that, we really learned the business transformation piece around. We got out of some really bad contracts, $100+ million contracts in IT over 10 years, which were down to now $20 million contracts, same contracts. So tremendous amount of savings and cash savings for the company. And to the point where, our books became quite attractive, businesses became quite attractive, where Advent International acquired us. So in my next role, I'm looking for similar challenges, something where I can bring value to the table from my experience in aerospace and high-tech engineering and manufacturing. And at the same time, there is challenge for me to learn as well. I like a global platform, and I do very well with that sort of environment. And so the Cobham experience has been just tremendous, and I'm just looking for similar opportunities, as we go from here.
Yeah, as we go from here. Awesome. Put a link in the description so you can see the article. Again, it's entitled Missed Opportunities for IT, and it's over at the CIO Insider magazine. Thanks so much, everyone, for being here.
Thank you, Dan, for having me. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.